The storm came without warning, the way betrayal always does. Somewhere above the Colorado Rockies, at 30,000 feet, Captain Sarah Mitchell realized she was flying toward her own execution. The coordinates were wrong, the mission briefing had been a lie, and the technology locked in her cockpit wasn't meant to protect America, it was meant to destroy it. Below her, snow-covered peaks stretched endlessly into darkness, each mountain a silent witness to secrets that powerful men would kill to protect. She had two choices: complete the delivery and become complicit in treason, or crash into the wilderness and pray someone decent would find what remained. The engine began to fail just as she made her decision. Some angels fall from grace, others fall from the sky, carrying the weight of a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of government. But sometimes, just sometimes, when an angel crashes into the right place at the right time, it's not the end of their story. It's the beginning of everyone else's salvation. This is the story of three souls who found each other in the wreckage of broken dreams and discovered that the most dangerous missions aren't always flown at supersonic speed. Sometimes they're fought in hospital waiting rooms and kitchen tables, where the stakes are a little girl's future and the price of admission is everything you thought you knew about honor, duty, and love. The storm hit Pine Valley like a freight train wrapped in ice and fury. Jack Morrison stood at his kitchen window, watching the snow whip sideways across the yard, each flake a tiny missile in the howling wind. The old farmhouse groaned under the assault, its bones protesting after 40 years of Colorado winters. "Daddy, the lights are flickering again," Emma called from the living room, her voice carrying that particular note of worry that 8-year-olds tried so hard to hide. Jack turned from the window, forcing a smile he didn't quite feel. His daughter sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, surrounded by paper airplanes of every conceivable design. Her latest creation, a sleek fighter jet made from magazine pages, rested in her palm like a prayer. "Just the storm, sweetheart. Nothing we can't handle." But as he said it, the lights dimmed once more, and somewhere in the walls, something expensive-sounding groaned. Jack's jaw tightened. The heating system had been on its last legs for months, held together by his engineering knowledge and sheer stubborn will. One more repair bill, one more major expense, and they'd lose the house. The bank had already sent 2 notices. Emma held up her paper jet, studying its lines with the intensity of a real aeronautical engineer. "Do you think this one could really fly? Daddy, I mean, if it was big enough." Jack knelt beside her, running his weathered fingers along the paper fuselage. At 45, his hands told the story of his transition from designing aircraft systems to fixing broken appliances and farm equipment. The calluses were different now, harder, earned through necessity rather than passion. "The design is sound," he said, meaning it. "You've got the weight distribution right, and these wing angles. Emma, this is better than some of the prototypes I used to work on." Her hazel eyes, so much like her mother's, lit up with hope. "Really, so maybe when I grow up, I really could be a pilot." The question hit him like it always did, a knife between the ribs. Dr. Henderson's words from her last cardiac checkup echoed in his mind. "The ventricular septal defect is small, Mr. Morrison, but given her age and size, any career involving high G-forces or extreme physical stress would be inadvisable. We'll see, baby girl. Medicine is advancing all the time." It was a lie wrapped in hope, and they both knew it, but hope was sometimes all they had. The wind outside intensified, rattling the windows in their frames. Jack stood, checking his watch. Nearly 9 p.m., way past Emma's bedtime, but the storm had them both too wired to think about sleep. That's when they heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the storm. Lower, mechanical, growing louder, and then suddenly cutting off with a violence that made Jack's blood freeze. "Daddy!" Emma's voice was small now, really scared. Jack was already moving toward the coat closet, grabbing his heavy jacket and the industrial flashlight he kept charged for emergencies. "Stay inside, Em. I'll be right back." "But no buts. Lock the door behind me." He stepped into the storm and immediately understood why people died in weather like this. The wind didn't just blow, it attacked, driving snow into his eyes and stealing his breath. Visibility was maybe 10 feet, the world beyond that lost in a white void. But he'd heard what he'd heard. Somewhere out there, something had fallen from the sky. Jack oriented himself by the porch light and began walking toward the back 40, where his property bordered the old airfield. With each step, the snow crunched beneath his boots, and the wind tried to knock him sideways. His flashlight beam carved a narrow cone through the blizzard, revealing nothing but swirling white. Then he saw it, a glow, orange and wrong, maybe a quarter-mile out. Not the steady light of a house or barn, but the flickering urgency of something burning. Jack broke into a run, his legs pumping through knee-deep snow. His lungs burned with cold air, and his heart hammered against his ribs. After 15 minutes of fighting through the storm, the wreckage came into view. The aircraft was small, clearly military in design despite its civilian paint job. It had plowed a furrow through the snow before coming to rest against a stand of pine trees. One wing was completely sheared off, the other twisted at an impossible angle. Smoke rose from the engine compartment, but mercifully, there were no flames. "Hello!" Jack shouted over the wind. "Anyone alive in there?" No response. He approached the cockpit, his flashlight revealing a spiderweb of cracks across the canopy. Through the fractured glass, he could see movement slight, but definitely human. The cockpit release was jammed. Jack set down his flashlight and threw his weight against the mechanism, his engineering mind automatically cataloging the damage. This was a test aircraft, definitely military spec, and whoever had been flying it was either very important or very lucky to have access to equipment like this. The canopy finally gave way with a screech of twisted metal. Inside, slumped over the controls, was a woman. She was maybe 40, with short auburn hair beneath a flight helmet that had probably saved her life. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, and her breathing was shallow but steady. Her flight suit bore no insignia that Jack could see, but everything about her posture, even unconscious, screamed military precision. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. What happened?" "You crashed. There's a storm. I'm going to get you out of here." Jack worked quickly, checking for obvious injuries before carefully extracting her from the wreckage. She was heavier than she looked muscle, not fat, and when she tried to stand, her legs nearly buckled. "Steady, I've got you." She looked around, taking in the snow, the wreckage, the impossibility of her situation. I can't remember." "It's okay. Let's get you warm first. Figure out the rest later." The walk back to the house took twice as long with an injured woman leaning on his shoulder, but Jack had carried wounded people before. Different war, different life, but the skills came back like muscle memory. Emma had the door open before they reached the porch, her face pale with worry and excitement. "Is she okay? Is she really a pilot? Help me get her to the couch. And grab that first aid kit from the bathroom." They settled the woman on the old sofa, Jack's late wife's quilt still folded on the back. Emma returned with the medical supplies, her eyes wide with something approaching awe. "Are you really a pilot?" she whispered. The woman's eyes tracked to Emma's face, and something flickered there, confusion, but also warmth. Yes, I think so. I remember flying, but..." She touched the bandage Jack had applied to her forehead. "Everything else is kind of fuzzy." "What's your name?" Jack asked gently. She was quiet for a long moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Sarah. I think Sarah Mitchell, but I can't remember anything else. How I got here, where I was going." Her voice trailed off, and Jack could see the fear creeping in. Emma, with the directness of childhood, asked the question Jack was thinking. "What kind of pilot are you like? Passenger planes or fighter jets or what?" Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her chest, fingers tracing over patches that had been removed from her flight suit. "Fast planes," she said softly. "Really fast planes." Jack and Emma exchanged glances. In a place like Pine Valley, they didn't see many pilots of any kind, let alone ones who flew really fast planes and crashed in military-spec aircraft. "Well, Miss Mitchell," Jack said, settling into his recliner, "looks like you're stuck with us until this storm passes. I'm Jack Morrison, and this is my daughter Emma." Emma wiggled closer to the couch, her paper airplane collection forgotten. "I want to be a pilot too," she announced. "More than anything in the whole world." Sarah studied the little girl's face, and for just a moment, the confusion cleared from her eyes. "Do you now? What kind of planes do you want to fly?" "All of them." Emma's enthusiasm was infectious, but especially the ones that go really, really fast. Like rockets, but with wings. Something passed across Sarah's features, a ghost of a smile. Maybe, or the shadow of a memory trying to surface. "Tell you what," Sarah said, her voice stronger now. "Tomorrow, if I'm feeling better, maybe I can show you how to make a paper airplane that actually flies properly." Emma's gasp of delight was audible across the room. "Really, you know how to make good ones?" "I know how to make ones that break the sound barrier," Sarah said. And for the first time since Jack had pulled her from the wreckage, she sounded completely certain of something. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the valley, but inside the Morrison house, surrounded by the warmth of an unexpected friendship, the future was beginning to take shape in ways none of them could have imagined. Jack woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter drifting from the kitchen. For a moment, still caught between sleep and consciousness, he let himself believe that Susan was downstairs making breakfast, that the last 4 years had been some terrible nightmare. Then Emma's voice cut through the illusion. "So the angle of attack is like the airplane's attitude." "Exactly." Sarah's voice, clear and animated. "You're a natural at this, kiddo." Jack pulled on yesterday's clothes and padded downstairs to find his kitchen transformed into an impromptu flight academy. Sarah sat at the table, looking remarkably better considering she'd been pulled from a plane crash 12 hours ago. Emma was beside her, completely absorbed as Sarah demonstrated aerodynamic principles using breakfast items. "See, this piece of toast is your wing," Sarah explained, tilting the bread at various angles. "Too steep, and you stall. Too shallow, and you can't generate enough lift. It's all about finding that sweet spot." Jack paused in the doorway, struck by the scene. Emma hadn't been this animated about anything in months. Her usual careful reserve replaced by genuine excitement. And Sarah. There was something different about her this morning. The confusion was still there around the edges. But when she talked about flying, she became someone else entirely. Someone confident and knowledgeable and completely in her element. "Morning," he said, making his presence known. Emma bounced in her chair. "Daddy Sarah's teaching me about aerodynamics. Did you know that birds and airplanes work basically the same way?" "I did know that, actually." Jack poured himself coffee from the pot Sarah had apparently figured out how to operate. "How are you feeling this morning?" Sarah's hand went unconsciously to the bandage on her forehead. "Better, clearer. Thank you for last night, for saving my life." "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "Not everyone would have gone out in that storm. Not everyone would have brought a stranger into their home." Her eyes met his, and Jack saw something there that made his pulse quicken. Intelligence? Yes, but also strength. Whatever Sarah Mitchell's story was, she wasn't some helpless victim. Emma, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, held up a paper airplane that looked nothing like her usual attempts. This one was sleek, professional, with fold lines so precise they might have been cut with a laser. "Look what Sarah taught me to make. She says this is based on a real fighter jet." Jack examined the paper aircraft, his engineer's eye immediately recognizing the sophistication of the design. This is an F-22 configuration." Sarah went very still. "Is it?" "The wing geometry, the engine placement." Jack looked up at her. "You'd have to know military aircraft pretty intimately to fold something like this from memory." For a moment, nobody spoke. Emma looked back and forth between the adults, sensing tension she didn't understand. I told you, Sarah said carefully. I remember flying fast planes, fast planes with classified configurations. Sarah's jaw tightened. I can't remember everything. Okay, but my hands, they know things my brain doesn't. When I folded that plane, it just felt right. Jack studied her face, looking for deception and finding only frustration. Either she was an excellent actress, or the head injury had genuinely scrambled her memories while leaving her muscle memory intact. Emma, with a child's ability to cut through tension, piped up, "Can we go see your airplane? I want to see what a real fighter jet looks like." "It's not a fighter jet," Sarah said quickly. "Just a civilian aircraft, and it's pretty banged up. Still, I bet it's cool. Daddy used to work on airplanes. You know, before Mommy died and we moved here." Jack felt Sarah's eyes on him. "What kind of work?" "Systems engineering, avionics, mostly, flight control computers, navigation systems." He shrugged. "Nothing as glamorous as flying them." "Where did you work?" The question seemed casual, but something in Sarah's tone made Jack look at her more carefully. "Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works Division, but that was a long time ago." Sarah went very pale. "Skunk Works. You know it. Maybe, the name sounds familiar." She pressed her fingers to her temples. "God, this is frustrating. It's like trying to remember a dream after you wake up." Emma, growing bored with the adult conversation, tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Can you teach me more airplane stuff?" "Please." Sarah's expression softened. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. How do you fly in a storm? How fast can jets really go? What's it like to break the sound barrier?" "Emma," Jack warned, "Ms. Mitchell needs to rest, not answer a million questions." "It's okay," Sarah said. "Actually, talking about flying, it helps, like exercising a muscle that's been asleep." She turned back to Emma. "Breaking the sound barrier. It's like punching through a wall made of air. Everything goes quiet for just a second, and then you're flying in a whole different world." "You've actually done it?" Emma's eyes were saucers. Sarah nodded slowly. "Yeah, I have. Many times." Jack's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. "Civilian pilots didn't break the sound barrier." "Many times. Hell, most civilian pilots never broke it at all." "What kind of planes were you flying?" he asked. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. "Fast ones, experimental ones. The kind that—" She trailed off, pressing her palm against her forehead. "It's right there, but I can't quite grab it." Emma, oblivious to the implications, clapped her hands together. "That's so cool. I knew you were special. I prayed for a pilot to teach me about flying, and then you fell right out of the sky." "You prayed for a pilot?" Sarah asked softly. Emma nodded seriously. "Every night, Dr. Henderson says I might not be able to fly when I grow up because of my heart, but I figured if I learned enough about it, maybe God would change his mind." Jack watched Sarah's face transform as Emma spoke. The confusion was still there, but underneath it was something fierce and protective. "What's wrong with your heart, sweetheart?" "It's got a little hole in it," Emma explained with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a child who'd grown up with medical terminology. "Nothing that hurts or anything, but it means I can't do stuff that's too exciting." Sarah looked at Jack. "How serious is it?" "Ventricular septal defect. Small, but enough to rule out any career that involves high G-forces or extreme physical stress. According to who?" "Her cardiologist, Dr. Henderson in town." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, "Has she ever been evaluated by a pediatric cardiac surgeon? Someone who specializes in exactly this type of defect?" Jack felt a familiar stab of guilt. "The nearest children's hospital is in Denver. Insurance doesn't cover consultations without a referral, and Dr. Henderson says surgery isn't necessary. But has she been evaluated by someone who does these repairs every day?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Jack had wondered the same thing himself. Late at night when the doubts crept in, But specialists cost money they didn't have, and Dr. Henderson had seemed confident in his assessment. Maybe we should talk about something else, Jack said, but Sarah wasn't ready to let it go. Emma, honey, can you go get me a glass of water? I need to talk to your dad for a minute. Emma bounced off her chair and headed for the kitchen. Sarah waited until she was out of earshot, then leaned forward. I may not remember much about my life, she said quietly, but I know enough about medicine to tell you that small VSDs in children are often completely repairable. A simple patch, outpatient procedure, and she could live a completely normal life. You're not a doctor. No, but I've known a lot of military pilots who've had their careers saved by cardiac repairs. Dr. Henderson is a small-town family physician. What does he know about the latest surgical techniques? Jack felt his temper rising. He knows Emma. He's been her doctor since she was born. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe he's too invested in keeping her safe to consider that safe and possible aren't the same thing. Emma returned with the water, effectively ending the conversation. But as Jack watched his daughter chatter excitedly about aerodynamics and thrust-to-weight ratios, he couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was right. Maybe they'd been settling for limitations instead of seeking possibilities. And maybe the mysterious woman who'd fallen from the sky was about to change everything. The blizzard had moved on by afternoon, leaving Pine Valley buried under 3 feet of pristine snow. Jack was in the barn, working on Mrs. Henderson's tractor engine, when Sarah found him. She moved quietly across the snow-covered yard, and he didn't notice her until she cleared her throat. Sorry to bother you. Emma's napping, and I needed some air. Jack wiped his hands on a rag and studied her. She'd found some of Susan's old clothes jeans and a sweater that fit her surprisingly well. But it was her posture that caught his attention. Military straight, alert, like someone constantly scanning for threats. How's the head? Better, clearer. She looked around the barn, taking in the organized chaos of tools and spare parts. This is quite a setup. You do all your own mechanical work. These days, yeah. Not much call for avionics engineers in Pine Valley. Sarah moved closer to the workbench, her eyes scanning the technical manuals and diagnostic equipment. You've got some serious gear here. This oscilloscope is military grade. Jack paused. How would you know that? She frowned, pressing her fingers to her temples. I don't know. I just know. He watched her pick up a circuit board he'd been repairing, her fingers automatically tracing the pathways like she was reading a map. This is a flight control processor, she said without thinking. Probably from a regional aircraft, maybe a Beechcraft King Air. Her eyes went wide. How do I know that? Jack set down his wrench. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She nodded, still staring at the circuit board. That plane you crashed, it wasn't civilian. Was it? I don't know. I don't remember. But you know military aircraft configurations? You recognize defense contractor equipment. You fold paper airplanes that shouldn't exist outside of classified design specs. Jack stepped closer. Who are you really? Sarah set down the circuit board and met his eyes. I wish I could tell you. I wish I could remember. But every time I try to think about who I am or what I was doing here, it's like hitting a wall. Then let's try a different approach. Don't think about who you are. Think about what you know. What do your hands remember? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, she moved to Jack's computer terminal. May I? Jack nodded, and Sarah's fingers began flying over the keyboard with practiced efficiency. She pulled up aviation databases, technical specifications, classified aircraft profiles that shouldn't have been accessible from a barn in rural Colorado. How are you accessing those files? Jack asked, his voice tight. I have clearance codes. I don't remember getting them, but I know them. She turned to him, and her face was pale. Top secret, SCI level. Jack, I think I might be in a lot of trouble. Before Jack could respond, car doors slammed in the driveway. Through the barn window, he could see a black SUV with government plates. 2 men in dark suits were walking toward the house. Shit, Sarah breathed. They found me. Who found you? I don't know, but we need to. Sarah stopped, her hand going to her chest. Her fingers traced over the spot where insignia would have been on her flight suit. Oh God, I remember. Remember what want my name, my real name. She looked at him, and her eyes were filled with something between terror and determination. I'm Captain Sarah Mitchell, United States Air Force, test pilot, classified aircraft division. And those men coming to your door are either here to rescue me or kill me. Jack stared at her. Kill you? Why would anyone want to kill you? Because I was carrying something when I crashed, something that can't fall into the wrong hands. Sarah grabbed his arm. Jack, where's my flight bag? The one from the plane. In the house, by the front door. We need to get to it before they do, and we need to get Emma somewhere safe. They moved quickly across the yard, staying low behind the barn until they could see the front of the house. The two men were on the porch now, one knocking while the other stood watch. Jack could see the bulge of shoulder holsters beneath their jackets. Back door, Jack whispered. They circled around to the kitchen entrance, Sarah moving with a fluidity that spoke of extensive tactical training. Whatever memory gaps she had, her body remembered how to be a soldier. Inside, they could hear Emma's voice from the living room. Daddy's in the barn, he'll be right back. That's okay, sweetheart, came a man's voice, smooth and professional. We'll wait. Is there anyone else here with you? Jack and Sarah exchanged glances. If Emma mentioned the mysterious pilot, things would get complicated fast. Sarah moved silently to the front closet where her flight bag sat among the coats. She unzipped it carefully, her hands shaking slightly as she reached inside. What she pulled out made Jack's blood run cold. It was a data drive, unmarked but clearly military spec. But more than that, it was the way Sarah held it, like it contained the secrets of the universe. What's on that thing? Jack whispered. Everything, Sarah said quietly. The next generation of stealth technology, propulsion systems that could change the balance of power, and now it's sitting in your coat closet while federal agents are in your living room. From the front room, they heard Emma's voice again. Are you friends of Sarah's? Silence. Then Sarah. Jack closed his eyes. Too late. Yes, the pilot lady. She crashed in our field last night, and Daddy saved her. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, footsteps, moving quickly through the house. Sarah grabbed Jack's arm. Is there another way out? Basement. Storm cellar leads to the old root cellar about 50 yards from the house. Go. Take Emma. I'll handle this. Like hell. I'm not leaving you to face federal agents alone. Jack, you don't understand. If they're here to retrieve me, fine. But if they're here to clean up a mess, she looked toward the living room where Emma was probably still chattering innocently to strangers. I won't let anything happen to her. Before Jack could argue, one of the men appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was tall, professional, with the kind of face that gave away nothing. Captain Mitchell, he said calmly, we've been looking for you. Sarah straightened, and suddenly Jack could see the Air Force officer beneath the small-town refugee. Agent Peterson, NSA, we're here to bring you home. And the package I was carrying, Peterson's eyes flicked to the flight bag in Sarah's hands. Secure, I hope. Sarah held up the data drive. Depends on your definition of secure. Peterson relaxed slightly. Thank God. When we lost your signal in the storm, we feared the worst. The Secretary of Defense has been having apoplexy for 12 hours. Jack felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. These were the good guys. Then, come to rescue Sarah, not eliminate witnesses. There's just one problem, Sarah said, and her voice had gone very cold. I don't remember being given any orders to transport classified materials to an unsecured location during a blizzard. Peterson's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Captain, you suffered a head injury. Memory gaps are common. Memory gaps? Yes. Complete personality transplants? No. Sarah stepped closer to Peterson. and Jack was reminded that she was a trained military officer. I remember my training, Agent Peterson. I remember that classified materials are never transported without escort. I remember that test pilots don't run courier missions. Peterson glanced at Jack, then back at Sarah. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, Sarah said firmly. Mr. Morrison saved my life. He's earned the right to know what he's gotten himself into. Peterson sighed. Very well, Captain. You volunteered for this mission. The technology on that drive represents a breakthrough in propulsion systems. Our intelligence indicated that foreign agents were planning to steal it from the Nevada facility. You were transporting it to a secure location when the weather forced you down. Sarah studied his face. And my memory of this volunteer mission will return in time, I'm sure. Jack didn't like the way Peterson said that. There was something too smooth about it, too rehearsed, and Sarah clearly felt the same way. I'm not going anywhere until my memory returns, she said. And neither is this drive. Peterson's professional mask slipped for just a moment. Captain, that's not really an option. National security is at stake. Then you'd better hope my memory comes back quickly. From the living room, Emma's voice called out, Daddy, is everything okay? Jack made a decision that would change everything. Agent Peterson, I think you and your partner should leave now. Peterson looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Sir, you don't understand the seriousness of this situation. I understand that a woman with a head injury doesn't remember volunteering for a dangerous mission, and she doesn't trust the people claiming to be her allies. That's serious enough for me. Peterson's hand moved slightly toward his jacket, and Sarah tensed like a coiled spring. That would be a mistake, she said quietly. For a moment, the kitchen was frozen in potential violence. Then Peterson seemed to remember where he was, a family home with a child in the next room, and his hand moved away from his weapon. Captain Mitchell, you have 24 hours to remember your duty. After that, we'll have to consider other options. With that threat hanging in the air, Peterson and his partner left. Jack watched through the window as their SUV disappeared down the snowy road. Well, Sarah said shakily, that could have gone better. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face bright with curiosity. Who were those men? Daddy. They asked me a lot of questions about Sarah. Jack knelt down to Emma's level. Just some people looking for her, nothing to worry about. But as he said it, Jack caught Sarah's eye over Emma's head. They both knew that wasn't true. Sarah was carrying something that powerful people wanted, and now the Morrison family was caught in the middle. The question was, were they protecting a hero or harboring a fugitive? And did it matter? If the alternative was letting harm come to the woman who'd brought light back into Emma's eyes that evening. After Emma had gone to bed, Jack and Sarah sat at the kitchen table with the data drive between them like a loaded gun. Sarah turned it over in her hands, her brow furrowed in concentration. Anything coming back? Jack asked. Pieces? Fragments? Sarah closed her eyes. I remember being at Edwards Air Force Base. There was a briefing room, maybe a dozen people in suits. They were talking about Chinese and Russian spy networks, about technology that could shift the balance of power. And you volunteered to transport this? Sarah's eyes snapped open. No, that's what's bothering me. I remember arguing against the mission. I said it was too dangerous, too exposed. Why would I volunteer for something I opposed? Jack leaned forward. What's the last thing you clearly remember? Walking to my quarters after the briefing. I was angry, frustrated. The project director, Colonel Harrison, had basically ordered me to think about it overnight. Sarah pressed her palms against her temples. Then nothing until I woke up in that cockpit. So somewhere between going to bed and waking up in a crashed plane, you apparently changed your mind and stole classified technology. It looks that way. Jack studied her face in the lamplight. Even with the bandage and the obvious stress, Sarah Mitchell was a beautiful woman. But more than that, she radiated competence and integrity. Everything about her screamed trustworthy. I don't buy it, he said finally. What do you mean? I mean, I've known you for less than 24 hours, and I can already tell you're not the type to go rogue. You're military through and through. Duty, honor, country, it's written in your DNA. Sarah smiled sadly. You'd be surprised how many good soldiers go bad when the price is right. Not you. How can you be so sure? Jack thought about it. Because of how you are with Emma. The way you look at her when she talks about flying. You see something in her that everyone else has written off. Someone mercenary wouldn't care about an 8-year-old's dreams. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She reminds me of someone, she said finally, who, I don't know, but when I look at her, I get this feeling, like I've failed someone before, and this is my chance to make it right. Before Jack could respond, a sound from outside made them both freeze. Car engines, coming up the drive, but not one vehicle, several. Jack moved to the window and cursed under his breath. 3 black SUVs were surrounding the house, their occupants already deploying with military precision. They came back, Sarah said, joining him at the window. With friends. Sarah pocketed the data drive and moved toward the gun cabinet in the corner. Do you have any weapons? Hunting rifles? Nothing that'll stop a federal task force. It doesn't matter. We're not shooting our way out of this. Not with Emma upstairs. As if summoned by her name, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, why are there so many cars outside? Jack's heart clenched. His little girl, his everything, was about to be caught in the middle of something beyond her understanding. Emma, baby, I need you to go back to your room and stay there. Okay, no matter what you hear, don't come out until I come get you. But no buts. Promise me. Emma nodded solemnly and disappeared back upstairs. A moment later, loud knocking echoed through the house. Federal agents, open up. Sarah looked at Jack. I should surrender. Turn myself in. Hand over the drive. It's the only way to keep you and Emma safe. What if they're not the good guys? What if they are? Jack thought about Agent Peterson's too smooth manner, his barely concealed threats. My gut says we can't trust them. Your gut could be wrong. Maybe, but I'd rather be wrong and alive than right and dead. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. We know you're in there. Captain Mitchell opened the door. Sarah moved to the back of the house, checking sight lines and escape routes with professional efficiency. The storm cellar you mentioned, where does it come out? Old root cellar near the tree line. From there, you could make it to the airfield. What about Emma? I'll keep her safe. They want you in the drive, not us. Sarah shook her head. I won't leave her. If something happens to you, nothing's going to happen to me. These are federal agents, not terrorists. They're not going to hurt a civilian and his daughter. But even as Jack said it, he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. There was something about this whole situation that felt wrong, something that made his combat instincts twitch with unease. The front door exploded inward. Federal agents poured into the house like a black tide, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Jack raised his hands immediately, placing himself between the stairs and the intruders. Where is she? The lead agent was older than Peterson, with silver hair and the bearing of a man used to getting what he wanted. Where's who? Don't play games. Morrison, we know Captain Mitchell is here. We know she has classified materials that belong to the United States government. I don't know what you're talking about. The agent stepped closer. My name is Director Walsh, NSA. Captain Sarah Mitchell is a fugitive from justice. She stole technology that could endanger American lives if it falls into the wrong hands. Now, where is she? Jack kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. If Sarah really was a fugitive, why hadn't Peterson arrested her when he had the chance? Why come back with an army? I told you, I don't know what you're talking about. Walsh nodded to one of his men, who immediately headed for the stairs. My daughter's up there, Jack said quickly. She's 8 years old. She doesn't know anything about any of this. Then you'd better hope Captain Mitchell is more cooperative than you are. But when the agent returned from upstairs, he was alone. No sign of the target, sir. The child is secure. Walsh's eyes narrowed. Search the house, basement, attic, every closet. She's here somewhere. As agents spread throughout the house, Jack allowed himself a small smile. Sarah had gotten out. Whatever game these people were playing, she wasn't going to make it easy for them. You know, Walsh said conversationally, obstruction of justice is a federal crime. So is harboring a fugitive. Your daughter could end up in foster care while you serve 10 to 20 in federal prison. Jack's blood went cold. You leave Emma out of this. That's entirely up to you. Mr. Morrison, tell me where Captain Mitchell went, and your daughter keeps her father. Before Jack could respond, one of the agents called from the kitchen. Sir, we found something. Walsh and Jack both moved to the kitchen, where an agent was holding up Sarah's flight bag. It was in the closet, sir, but it's empty. Walsh turned back to Jack, his face dark with anger. Where's the drive? Morrison. What drive? Walsh backhanded him across the face, the blow sharp enough to split his lip. Jack tasted blood but didn't flinch. Wrong answer. Try again. From upstairs came a small, frightened voice. Daddy. Jack's heart broke. Emma had heard the commotion, heard violence in her own home. She was probably terrified, confused, wondering why strangers were hurting her father. The drive? Morrison? Last chance. Jack looked up at Walsh, blood trickling from his lip, and made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Go to hell. Walsh smiled coldly and nodded to one of his men. Bring the girl down here. Maybe she knows something her father doesn't. No. Jack lunged forward, but two agents grabbed him, holding him back. She's just a kid. She doesn't know anything. Then this shouldn't take long. But before anyone could move toward the stairs, the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on a second later, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Through the windows, Jack could see that the power was out across the entire valley. Sir, one of the agents said into his radio, we've lost grid power. Looks like the whole area is dark. Walsh cursed under his breath. Probably knocked out a transformer. Get the generators. His words were cut off by the sound of gunfire from outside. Not the sharp crack of small arms, but the deep, thunderous boom of military ordnance. What the hell? Walsh moved to the window, and his face went pale. We're taking fire heavy caliber, probably 50 cal. The agents scattered, seeking cover as windows exploded inward. Jack hit the floor and began crawling toward the stairs, desperate to reach Emma. But before he could get there, a new sound filled the air, the distinctive whine of jet engines, coming in fast and low. Through the chaos, Jack heard Walsh screaming into his radio. Mayday, mayday. We're under attack, unknown aircraft, military spec. Jack managed to reach the stairs as the house shook with the passage of something moving very, very fast overhead. He pulled himself up, step by step, while bullets and debris rained down around him. He found Emma huddled in her closet, clutching her paper airplane collection. When she saw him, she threw herself into his arms. Daddy, I was so scared. It's okay, baby. I've got you. But even as he held her, Jack wondered if that was true. Outside, a war was being fought in their front yard. Sarah was gone, along with technology that powerful people were willing to kill for. And somewhere in the darkness, jet engines were circling like predators. The question was who was hunting whom. The attack lasted exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds. Jack knew because he counted every one, holding Emma in her closet while the house shook around them and the sound of automatic weapons fire echoed through the valley. When the silence finally came, it was deafening. Jack waited another 5 minutes before venturing downstairs, leaving Emma hidden in her room with strict instructions not to move. What he found in his living room looked like a war zone. The federal agents were gone, fled or dead. He couldn't tell which. His furniture was destroyed, windows blown out, walls pockmarked with bullet holes. But the house was still standing, and more importantly, Emma was safe. A sound from the kitchen made him freeze. Footsteps, careful and measured. Jack grabbed a poker from the fireplace and moved carefully toward the sound. He rounded the corner to find Sarah Mitchell standing by the back door, still wearing Susan's clothes but now accessorized with military-grade body armor and carrying an assault rifle that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Jesus Christ, Jack breathed. What the hell just happened? Sarah turned to him, and her face was grim. I remembered who I really am. And who's that? Someone who doesn't exist in any official records. Someone who flies planes that don't officially exist, carrying out missions that never happen. Sarah set the rifle on the counter. I'm what they call a black ops pilot, Jack, the kind they send when they need something done quietly. Jack stared at her. So you did steal that technology? No, I was ordered to steal it by people who've been playing both sides of this game for years. I don't understand. Sarah pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. The technology on that drive, it's not American. It's Chinese, stolen from their military research program about 6 months ago. Someone in our government has been selling it to the highest bidder, a piece at a time. Jack's mind reeled. And you were supposed to do what with it? Deliver it to the buyers. Russian intelligence. We think. But something went wrong. Either I grew a conscience, or someone double-crossed someone else. Sarah touched the bandage on her forehead. I think I tried to escape with the drive instead of completing the delivery. That's why I can't remember they drugged me, tried to make me compliant, but the head injury from the crash must have interfered with whatever they gave me. Who's they? I'm still working on that, but Director Walsh isn't NSA, at least, not officially. The men who attacked this house, they were contractors, mercenaries. Jack slumped into a chair across from her. And the cavalry that showed up, the jets. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Friends, real friends. There are still some people in the Air Force who don't like selling secrets to foreign powers. So what happens now? Before Sarah could answer, Emma's voice came from the stairs. Daddy, is it safe to come down now? Jack looked around at the destruction of his home, at the woman with the assault rifle sitting in his kitchen, at the dangerous technology that had turned his quiet life upside down. Yeah, baby, it's safe. Emma patted down the stairs in her pajamas and slippers, taking in the damage with the resilience of childhood. Wow, those men really made a mess, didn't they? They sure did, Jack agreed. Emma looked at Sarah, noting the body armor and weapons with interest rather than fear. Are you a soldier? I am. Sarah knelt down to Emma's level. Emma, I need to tell you something important. Those men who were here, they weren't the good guys. And I'm going to have to leave soon, because it's not safe for me to stay. Emma's face fell. But you were going to teach me more about flying. I know, sweetheart. And I will, if I can. But right now, I have to make sure some very bad people don't get their hands on something that could hurt a lot of innocent people. Emma considered this with the seriousness that only children can bring to adult problems. Like a superhero mission. Sarah smiled. Exactly like that. Then you have to go. Superheroes always have to save people, even when they don't want to. Jack felt his throat tighten. His daughter, who'd been through so much loss already, was preparing to say goodbye to another person she'd grown attached to. But Sarah wasn't done. Emma, there's something else. Something about your heart. Jack stiffened. Sarah. No, let me finish. Sarah looked directly at Emma. I used to know a doctor, a heart surgeon who specialized in exactly the kind of problem you have. And he told me that most kids with small holes in their hearts could be fixed completely. Not just managed fixed. Emma's eyes went wide. Really, I could fly. I think so, but you'd need to see a specialist. Someone who knows more than your local doctor. Jack started to object, but Sarah held up a hand. I know money's tight. I know insurance is complicated. But I also know that little girls with big dreams deserve every chance to make them come true. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a business card. Dr. Marcus Webb, pediatric cardiac surgeon at Children's Hospital in Denver. He's the best in the country, and he owes me a favor. Jack took the card, staring at the elegant lettering. How do you know a pediatric heart surgeon? Sarah's expression went distant. I had a daughter once. She had the same condition as Emma. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Jack felt the pieces of Sarah's story clicking into place, the way she looked at Emma, the fierce protectiveness, the knowledge of medical procedures. He asked gently, she died, not from the heart defect that was fixable. She died because I was never there. Too many missions, too many secrets, too many times choosing duty over family. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. By the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. Emma, with the intuitive wisdom of children, walked over and took Sarah's hand. I'm sorry your little girl died, but maybe you can help me fly, and that would make her happy. Sarah's composure cracked, and tears started down her cheeks. Yeah, sweetheart, I think it would. Jack found himself standing, reaching out to touch Sarah's shoulder. The gesture was instinctive, protective, and when she looked up at him with those tear-filled eyes, something fundamental shifted between them. You don't have to do this alone, he said. Yes, I do. These people, they'll keep coming. As long as I'm here, you and Emma are in danger. Then don't be here. Come with us to Denver. Get Emma checked out by this specialist, and we'll figure out the rest together. Sarah shook her head. Jack, you don't understand what you're asking. I'm carrying state secrets. People want me dead. If you help me, you become targets too. We're already targets. Those men threatened Emma to get to you. You think they'll just forget about us once you're gone. The truth of that statement settled over them like a cold wind. Emma had seen federal agents, heard classified information, witnessed things that made her a potential liability. So what are you suggesting? Sarah asked. Jack looked around at his destroyed home, at his daughter holding hands with a woman who'd fallen from the sky, at the life he'd tried so hard to build from the ashes of his old one. I'm suggesting we disappear for a while. Take Emma to Denver. Get her the medical care she deserves, and then figure out how to stop the people who are willing to hurt children to protect their secrets. Sarah stared at him. You'd do that, give up everything you've built here. Jack looked at Emma, who was watching both adults with hopeful eyes. I've already lost everything that mattered once. I'm not doing it again. But your life here, your work, can be rebuilt. Emma's heart can't. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then, the people after me, they're not going to stop. This isn't just about the technology anymore. I know too much about their operation. Then we make sure they can't hurt anyone else. How? Jack smiled grimly. You said you had friends in the Air Force, people who don't like traitors. Maybe it's time they learned exactly who's been selling secrets to the enemy. Sarah's expression shifted, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked truly dangerous. You're talking about going to war with people who have unlimited resources and no conscience. I'm talking about protecting my daughter and the woman who gave her hope. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and peril. Finally, Emma spoke up. Are we going on an adventure? Jack and Sarah looked at each other, then at the little girl who'd somehow become the center of both their worlds. Yeah, sweetheart, Jack said. We're going on an adventure. The drive to Denver took 6 hours through mountain roads still treacherous with snow. Jack had expected the journey to be tense, filled with watching mirrors for pursuit and jumping at every helicopter overhead. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Emma chattered from the back seat about everything and nothing, occasionally asking Sarah questions about flying that revealed just how much she'd absorbed in their short time together. Sarah answered patiently, sometimes launching into technical explanations that should have bored an 8-year-old, but instead left Emma hanging on every word. Jack found himself stealing glances at Sarah as she talked. Away from the stress and danger of the past few days, he could see glimpses of who she must have been before life made her hard, a woman who genuinely loved aviation, who took joy in sharing that passion with others. How fast is the speed of sound? Emma asked for the third time. About 767 miles per hour at sea level, Sarah replied without a trace of impatience. but it changes with altitude and temperature. And you've gone faster than that, many times. What's the fastest you've ever gone? Sarah paused, glancing at Jack. Well, some of that information is classified, but let's just say that if you could fix your heart and become a pilot, you'd probably go faster than I ever did. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Really? The planes they're building now make the ones I flew look like tricycles. Jack could see Emma in the rearview mirror, her face glowing with possibility. For the first time in her young life, someone was talking about her future in terms of what she could accomplish, rather than what she couldn't. They reached Children's Hospital just after noon. Jack had called ahead using the contact information Sarah provided, and somehow he suspected Sarah had made some calls of her own. They had an appointment with Dr. Webb that afternoon. The hospital was impressive, gleaming towers of glass and steel that spoke of cutting-edge technology and unlimited resources. Jack felt underdressed in his work clothes and small-town sensibilities. But Dr. Webb turned out to be nothing like Jack had expected. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes and the sort of gentle manner that immediately put Emma at ease. When Sarah introduced Jack as a friend, Webb asked no questions about their unusual circumstances. So, Miss Emma, Dr. Webb said, kneeling down to her level. I hear you want to be a pilot. Emma nodded solemnly. More than anything, but Dr. Henderson says my heart won't let me. Well, let's take a look and see what we're dealing with. Shall we? The examination was thorough but gentle. Dr. Webb explained each step to Emma, turning the medical tests into a game of exploration. Jack watched his daughter's face throughout, seeing her anxiety give way to curiosity and then to hope. Finally, Dr. Webb sat down with the three of them in his office, Emma's scans displayed on a large monitor. Emma, he said, you have what we call a ventricular septal defect. It's a small hole between the chambers of your heart about the size of a pinky fingernail. Emma studied the images seriously. That's what's stopping me from flying. Well, it could. If left untreated, it might cause problems with physical exertion. But here's the good news, it's completely fixable. Jack felt his world shift. Fixable how? Minimally invasive surgery. We make a small incision, insert a patch to close the hole, and Emma goes home the next day. Recovery time is about 2 weeks, and then she can do anything any other kid can do. Including flying? Emma asked breathlessly. Dr. Webb smiled. Including flying. In fact, I've performed this exact procedure on 2 other kids who went on to become military pilots. Jack looked at Sarah, who was smiling through tears. What's the success rate? 98%. And Emma is an ideal candidate, young, healthy, good heart function otherwise. Dr. Webb turned to Emma. The question is, young lady, are you ready to take the first step toward your pilot's license? Emma's response was to launch herself out of her chair and hug Dr. Webb with enough force to nearly knock him over. I'll take that as a yes, he laughed. As they discussed scheduling and procedures, Jack found himself overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. Relief that Emma could be helped. Anger that they had wasted years accepting limitations that didn't need to exist. And gratitude toward the woman who'd crashed into their lives and refused to accept that a little girl's dreams weren't worth fighting for. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. Dr. Webb's staff arranged for temporary housing near the hospital, and Sarah somehow produced a credit card that covered all the expenses without question. That evening, as they sat in their hotel suite, watching Emma build paper airplanes with renewed enthusiasm, Jack finally asked the question that had been bothering him all day. How are you paying for all this? Sarah looked up from the laptop where she'd been working. Let's just say that when you've been doing black ops work for 15 years, you learn to prepare for the day when you might need to disappear. Offshore accounts. Something like that. She closed the laptop. Don't worry about the money. Jack, I've got more than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and no one left to spend it on. What about your daughter? You never told us her name. Sarah's expression went distant. Lily. Her name was Lily. She'd be 16 now if... She trailed off, then shook her head. She died when she was 7. A car accident while I was deployed. Her father, my ex-husband, said I might as well have been on another planet for all the good I did her. Jack felt his chest tighten. I'm sorry. I told myself it was noble, what I was doing, protecting freedom, serving my country. But really, I was just running away from anything that required me to be vulnerable. Sarah looked at Emma, who was testing the flight characteristics of her latest creation. When I look at Emma, I see all the chances I missed with Lily, all the bedtime stories I didn't read, all the school plays I missed, all the times I chose duty over love. That doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make me a good mother, either. Sarah stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Do you know what the worst part is? Lily forgave me for everything. Every missed birthday, every broken promise, every time I chose the mission over her. She'd just hug me when I got home and tell me she understood. Jack joined her at the window. Sounds like she loved you. She did, unconditionally, and I threw it away for what? A sense of duty to people who turned out to be criminals? You didn't know that then. I should have. The signs were all there, but I was too busy playing soldier to see them. Sarah turned to him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I can't get Lily back, Jack, but maybe I can make sure Emma gets everything Lily deserved. Before Jack could respond, Emma appeared beside them, holding up her latest paper airplane. Look, I made one with extra stability. Sarah, will you show me how to make it do barrel rolls? Sarah knelt down, taking the paper aircraft with the reverence she might show a real fighter jet. Absolutely. But first, let me tell you about a pilot named Lily who would have loved meeting you. As Sarah began telling Emma stories about her daughter, stories of a little girl who dreamed of flying, just like Emma did, Jack realized that they'd become something he'd never expected a family. Not the traditional kind, not the safe kind, but the kind forged in crisis and tempered by shared purpose. The kind that might just be strong enough to survive whatever came next. Because Jack was certain something would come next. Men like Director Walsh didn't give up easily, and the technology Sarah carried was too valuable to abandon. They'd found temporary sanctuary, but sanctuary and safety weren't the same thing. The question was, would they be ready when the storm found them again? Emma's surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. They spent the weekend exploring Denver, visiting the Air and Space Museum, taking tours of the airport, living like a normal family on vacation. Jack couldn't remember the last time he'd seen his daughter so happy, not the careful happiness of a child managing her own limitations, but the pure joy of a kid who suddenly saw infinite possibilities ahead. Sunday evening, they were in the hotel restaurant when Sarah's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. She read it quickly, her expression darkening. What is it? Jack asked. My friends in the Air Force. They've been investigating Walsh and his organization. She looked around the restaurant, then leaned closer. It's bigger than we thought. The technology theft is just one piece of a much larger operation. How much larger? They've been selling American military secrets to anyone willing to pay. China, Russia, North Korea. It doesn't matter as long as the price is right. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. And it goes all the way to the Pentagon. Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Denver weather. How high up? High enough that my friends are having trouble figuring out who to trust? Sarah glanced at Emma, who was absorbed in coloring a placemat. They want me to testify before a closed Senate Intelligence Committee, full immunity in exchange for everything I know. That's good. Right. You turn them in, the bad guys go to jail, we go home. Sarah shook her head. It's not that simple. These people have billions of dollars and decades of buried secrets. They won't go quietly, and testifying means going public, which means Emma and I become permanent targets. I'm sorry, Jack. I never meant for this to happen. Jack reached across the table and took her hand. Hey, look at me. Sarah met his eyes, and he could see the guilt and fear warring in her expression. None of this is your fault, he said firmly. You were used, manipulated, probably drugged. You didn't choose any of this. But I'm choosing now. I'm choosing to fight back. And that puts you both in danger. Emma looked up from her coloring. Are you guys talking about the bad guys again? Kind of, Jack said. Emma, how would you feel about taking a little vacation after your surgery? Maybe going somewhere far away for a while? Emma considered this. Would Sarah come with us? Jack looked at Sarah, who was staring down at the table. I don't know, sweetheart. Well, she has to, Emma said matter-of-factly. We're a family now. The simple declaration hit both adults like a physical blow. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and Jack felt his throat tighten. Emma, Sarah said gently, I might have to go away for a while to help catch some very bad people, like going to court. Something like that. Emma nodded seriously. Okay, but you have to promise to come back. Honey, I can't. Promise, Emma insisted. Pinky promise. Sarah looked helplessly at Jack, who could only shrug. Emma's pinky promises were sacred contracts in her world. Finally, Sarah extended her little finger. I promise to do everything I can to come back to you. Emma linked their pinkies with the solemnity of a treaty signing. Good, now, can we get ice cream? Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Jack and Sarah sat on the small balcony of their suite, watching the city lights twinkle below. You know you can't keep that promise, Jack said quietly. I know. Then why make it? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, because she needed to hear it, and because she trailed off, then started again. I never got to promise Lily anything. Never got to tell her I'd come back from deployment. Never got to make any of the commitments that matter. Maybe this is my chance to do it right. Jack studied her profile in the dim light. What happens if the Senate committee can't protect you? Then I disappear. New identity. New life. Somewhere they'll never find me. Alone. It's safer that way. Jack turned in his chair to face her. What if I don't want safer? Sarah looked at him, surprise flickering across her features. Jack, you don't know what you're saying. I'm saying that for the first time in 4 years. Emma has hope. For the first time since Susan died. I have hope. I'm not ready to give that up. Even if it means living in hiding, always looking over your shoulders. Even then, Sarah shook her head. You have no idea what that kind of life is like. The isolation, the paranoia, never being able to trust anyone. I'd trust you. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Sarah stared at him, and Jack could see her defenses crumbling. Jack, I'm in love with you, he said simply. I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other a few days. But watching you with Emma, seeing how you've given her back her dreams, I haven't felt this way since Susan. You don't know me. Not really. I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and willing to sacrifice everything to protect a little girl you just met. I know you see potential where everyone else sees limitations. I know you make Emma laugh in a way she hasn't since her mother died. Sarah stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of the balcony. What you're feeling isn't love, Jack. It's gratitude. Stockholm Syndrome, maybe. I crashed into your life in the middle of a crisis, and now you think, I think you're scared, Jack interrupted, standing to face her. I think you've spent so many years running from commitment that you don't recognize love when it's standing right in front of you. Love, Sarah laughed bitterly. Jack, in 3 days I'm going to walk into a Senate hearing room and destroy a conspiracy that involves some of the most powerful people in the government. You think they're going to let me live happily ever after? I think we'll figure it out together. Together, Sarah's voice rose, then dropped as she remembered Emma sleeping inside. Jack, these people killed my daughter to send me a message. They made it look like an accident. But I know the truth. What makes you think they won't do the same to Emma? The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. They killed Lily to keep me in line, to make sure I understood that disobedience had consequences. Sarah's voice was hollow, distant, and it worked. For years, it worked. I did everything they asked. Flew every mission, carried every secret, because I was too afraid of what they'd do to anyone else I cared about. But you're not afraid anymore. No, I'm terrified, but I'm also done running. Sarah turned to him, and her eyes blazed with determination. They want to use fear to control people? Fine, let them try. But they're not getting Emma. They're not getting you. And they're sure as hell not getting away with what they've done. Jack stepped closer, close enough to see the tears tracking down her cheeks. Then we stopped them, all of us, together. Jack, you don't understand what you're asking. He silenced her with a kiss, gentle but firm, pouring all his conviction into the contact. When they broke apart, Sarah was trembling. I understand perfectly, he said. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust us. Trust that some things are worth fighting for. Sarah looked toward the hotel room where Emma slept, surrounded by paper airplanes and dreams of flying. She's going to hate me when she understands what I've brought into your lives. No, she won't. She's going to thank you for giving her the chance to soar. Sarah leaned into him then, letting him hold her while she cried for the daughter she'd lost, the life she'd wasted, and the future she was finally brave enough to fight for. Tomorrow, Emma would have her surgery. The day after that, they'd start planning how to bring down a conspiracy that threatened everything they held dear. But tonight, for just a few hours, they were simply a family on a hotel balcony, holding each other against the darkness and believing that love might be stronger than fear. Emma's surgery began at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday that dawned crisp and clear over Denver. Jack paced the waiting room like a caged animal, while Sarah sat perfectly still, her military training helping her channel anxiety into focused calm. She's going to be fine, Sarah said for the 5th time in an hour. I know. Jack's voice was tight. It's just, I've already lost Susan. I can't lose Emma too. You won't. Sarah stood and took his hands, stopping his pacing. Dr. Webb has done this procedure hundreds of times. Emma is young and strong and has every reason to fight. What if something goes wrong? What if there are complications? Then we deal with them. Together. Sarah's voice was firm, grounding. Jack, Emma is going to wake up from this surgery with a perfectly healthy heart. She's going to grow up to be the first woman to break Mach 3, and we're going to be there to watch her do it. Jack wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. But the last few years had taught him that the universe was cruel and random, that good people died and bad people prospered, that hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. As if reading his thoughts, Sarah continued, Do you know what Emma said to me this morning when they were prepping her for surgery? Jack shook his head. She said, Tell Daddy not to worry. Angels watch over pilots, and I'm going to be a pilot. Sarah smiled. That kid has more faith in her little finger than most adults have in their entire bodies. Before Jack could respond, Dr. Webb appeared in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs but smiling. How is she? Jack demanded. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Dr. Webb's grin was infectious. The procedure went exactly as planned. We placed a small patch over the defect, and her heart function is already improved. Emma is in recovery now, asking for ice cream and wanting to know when she can start flying lessons. Jack felt his knees give way with relief. Sarah caught him, her own eyes bright with tears. Can we see her? Sarah asked. In about an hour, once she's fully awake. But I can tell you she's already arguing with the nurses about having to stay in bed. Jack laughed, the sound part relief and part pure joy. That's my Emma. An hour later, they found Emma propped up in her hospital bed, looking small but determined in a gown covered with cartoon airplanes. Her color was good, her eyes bright, and she greeted them with a megawatt smile. Daddy, Sarah, guess what, Dr. Webb says my heart is perfect now. He showed me pictures of the patch, and it looks like a tiny parachute. Jack hugged her carefully, mindful of the monitoring wires. How do you feel? Baby girl, Great a little sore, but great. Dr. Webb says I can go home tomorrow, and then in 2 weeks I can do anything I want. Emma's eyes sparkled with possibility. Anything, Daddy, including learning to fly. Sarah pulled up a chair beside the bed. Speaking of which, I have something for you. She produced a small wrapped package from her jacket. Emma tore into it with the enthusiasm of Christmas morning, revealing a model airplane unlike anything Jack had ever seen, sleek, futuristic, painted in Air Force colors. It's beautiful, Emma breathed. What kind of plane is it? It's called an X-47, Sarah said. It's experimental, unmanned, and it can fly faster than anything that's ever been built. But more importantly, she pointed to tiny lettering on the wing. See that lily? This plane is named after my daughter. Emma's eyes went wide. You named it after her. The real one. Yes. I was the test pilot who flew its first supersonic run. Sarah's voice was soft with memory. Lily always said she wanted to fly with me someday. Now she can fly with you. Emma hugged the model carefully, and Jack saw tears in her eyes. I'll take good care of her. I know you will. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Jack looked up to see a woman in a crisp business suit, her expression politely neutral, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. Miss Mitchell, I'm Agent Linda Chen, FBI. I need to speak with you. Sarah's posture shifted immediately, becoming alert and defensive. About what? The testimony you've agreed to provide. There have been some developments. Jack stepped forward. Can this wait? Emma just had surgery. Agent Chen's expression softened slightly as she looked at Emma. I'm sorry to hear that, sweetheart. Are you feeling better? Emma nodded solemnly. I'm going to be a pilot now. That's wonderful. Chen turned back to Sarah. Ms. Mitchell, I'm afraid this can't wait. We've received credible intelligence that Director Walsh and his organization are planning to move against you within the next 24 hours. Sarah's blood went cold. Here at the hospital, possibly, we're implementing security protocols immediately, but I need to brief you on the situation. Jack looked at Emma, who was following the conversation with the sharp attention of a child who'd learned that adult conversations often determined her fate. Can we step outside? Jack asked. Agent Chen nodded, and the three adults moved into the hallway. 6 months later, Emma Morrison took her first flying lesson in a small Cessna over the Colorado plains. Her heart perfectly repaired, perfectly strong, beat steady, and sure as she gripped the controls and felt the earth fall away beneath her. Sarah Mitchell never did testify before that Senate committee. The conspiracy collapsed from within when other whistleblowers came forward, braver than she had been, willing to sacrifice everything for truth. Director Walsh died in federal custody, officially a suicide, though no one who knew him believed it. Jack sold the farm in Pine Valley and bought a small house near the Denver airport, where the sound of jet engines was a lullaby instead of a threat. Sarah kept her promise to Emma, teaching her everything about flying while learning everything about staying, about building something instead of running from it. They discovered that some crashes aren't accidents, they're course corrections, that sometimes the sky doesn't call you to escape, but to find your way home, that the most important flights aren't measured in altitude or speed, but in the distance between who you were and who you choose to become. Love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it falls from a storm-torn sky, broken and bleeding, carrying secrets that could destroy everything. But when it lands in the right hands and the right hearts, it teaches us that the bravest thing we can do isn't to fly away from our fears. It's to fly toward our dreams. What would you be willing to crash for? What dreams are you still afraid to chase?